The Planning Commission will come to order. Please rise and follow myself in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Place your right hand over your heart. Repeat after me. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the principal planner please call roll?
Commissioner Duarte,
Present.
Commissioner Guerra,
Here.
Vice Chair Uva,
Present.
Chair Ortiz.
Present. This is a time to set aside for oral communications from the Planning Commission. Does any commissioner wish to make an announcement or report on a conference or meeting or request items for a future agenda item? Commissioner Uva.
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Guerra.
Not from that perspective, but I'd like us to consider, I don't know why we wouldn't, but item number 4 and 5 and doing that earlier in the agenda, since those should be easier and they're not public hearings. So that's something that we might want to look at doing, and that expedites the meeting. But that's just my opinion.
If it's a pleasure for the rest of the commissioners, we can do that right after hearing the presentations, and then we'll move forward. Does any commissioners have anything to say? No?
No, I'm fine with that.
Duarte, we're good?
I'm fine, whatever you guys want to do.
Commissioner Duarte?
I have no announcements.
And I have none. Does interim city planner have any changes to the agenda?
Yes. Under item 6, under other business, it's PLN-23-00031, appeal of interpretation. For recommendation, instead of saying approve, it should say deny appeal, uphold the city planner's determination. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the interim city planner have any presentations for today?
Yes, we do have a presentation from consultants who have prepared a parking study, and they will make a presentation. Julie Dixon will be making the presentation.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. I've met several of you in the past, and my name is Julie Dixon, and we're here today to talk about our annual parking data collection and analysis. And I'll just give a little bit of background here, is that we actually were initiated in the city of Downey. Oh, and by the way, my name is Julie Dixon. I should have said that as well. So we actually were initiated with the city back in 2015, and we completed a downtown parking action plan. This was something that was really important to really identify what the parking occupancy and demand was in and around the downtown area. And then as a result of that project, we've returned each year to collect the data in and around the downtown to really be able to allow the city to make data-driven decisions. And that's something that's of particular import because we know that there are certain impacts around the downtown. I know we have some very popular restaurant destinations, and something that was the initiation back in 2015 was, does Downey need paid parking, especially along Downey Avenue? And one of the things that we initiated back there in 2015 was to make sure to set the city up to be able to make data-driven decisions. And some of you may say, well, what does that mean when it comes to parking? And this is the one part of parking theory that I will impart upon you, is that when we achieve 85% occupancy consistently, it's when you need to basically start to make parking management decisions. It basically means you're near or at capacity, and that's really the driver, no pun intended, but at which time you really need to start making those decisions. And so I will say, very gratefully, that that's why when the city decided to start to count and measure occupancy on an ongoing basis, why this is so relevant. And what we wanted to share here with you today is not only your occupancy numbers, but also your turnover percentages, because this is also something that rather than investing in infrastructure to manage paid parking, there could also be small adjustments or tweaks that you can make to the program that could include changing time limits, introducing more short-term parking spaces, basically increasing the number of parking enforcement officers, because the one thing we want to always make sure of is to make sure that your experience parking in Downey is, I always say, convenient, easy, and accessible. And when you can really hit those three marks, it really demonstrates the success of a program. And I should highlight that because of COVID, we did skip data collection that year in 2020 because I think we can all agree our worlds were all on hold for that matter. And the one thing that happened last year is while we did collect data in 2021, we actually didn't end up reporting out to the Planning Commission or to Council. So tonight I'm basically going to show you the trending for actually the last 2 years. And so what you can see here in the bottom right-hand corner, it's a little bit faded, but I want to be able to highlight the fact that we're basically collecting the data in the downtown core and also in the parking lots, which you can see outlined there in those unique geometric shapes. And what we have done in the past is we have collected data basically on a weekday and a weekend. And we've also added evening pickups on Saturdays so that we can be sure to identify the implications of some of our expanding business hours and really see what those parking impacts are. I also like to highlight that the weekday collection is done on Tuesday so as not to be affected by the street sweeping regulations or any of the posted ordinances that are there on the city streets. And so I mentioned 85% earlier because I wanted you to see your numbers. And there on the bottom, we included the trending so that you can see what the average occupancies were by year. And where you see the yellow highlight, that's really your peak locations. And I think what's important to note is that you are well below the 85% occupancy thresholds, which basically means that you have ample parking inventory on street. And I mentioned that we're also going to talk about the off-street locations because that's going to be something that's going to be very important. For anyone that's heard me talk about your program in the past, you have something that many, many cities are very jealous of, and you have a beautiful parking garage that is adjacent to your downtown core. And I will tell you that many agencies would give practically anything to have a garage like yours. But as I move into those data streams, you'll see how low the occupancy is in the off-street locations. Now on Saturday, you can see that the numbers remain fairly consistent from the past years. But as no surprise, we have a very popular farmers market in our downtown. And you can actually see the implications of your farmers market and really see where we have those peak numbers. But one of the items that I like to share with municipalities across the country is you don't make parking decisions on 4th of July. And what I mean by that is 4th of July is a densely impacted day of the year, and you don't make parking decisions because of that one day of the year. And so I think it's important that you can see that that balance ebbs out as the day goes on, but we do like to demonstrate the fact that it highlights how popular your downtown is, especially on Saturday mornings. And so I also, before I get into the off-street locations, I want to talk a little bit about turnover rates. Now, we talked about occupancy, meaning how many cars are occupying the block faces by time of day. This actually trends how long the cars are staying for. And especially when we have posted time limits like 2 hours and 1 hour, this is an important number to understand that right now, in general, your visitors, customers, community members are tending to stay within the time limits that are posted. When you start to see that increase in number as it basically increases into the 3 to 6 hour, 6 to 9 hour and above, that means that those cars are occupying those spaces for longer than the posted time limit. But I also have to identify in California, with an ADA placard, you are authorized to stay in those spaces. So that can be one of the causes or reasons But another cause or reason could basically be that for parking enforcement, do we have enough consistent parking enforcement to help reinforce those issues as well? But I will tell you, as we look at the trends, you can see that we're actually still on the lower side, and we have seen that increase in compliance when we talk about less than the 3 hours. So again, this is something to show you are having a healthy parking experience in your downtown, and there are no red flags at this point based on this, other than the fact that we might need a little bit more enforcement to seek compliance of the posted time limits. So now when we talk about those turnover rates, I just want to make sure I didn't double dip here. Okay, that was my weekends, my bad. So on the weekends, again, the occupancy numbers, you tend to see a slight increase in the extended stays from 3 to 6 hours, but I can also identify that that's very likely due to staffing and not having enough staffing on the weekends to be able to enforce the posted time limits. So you can see a slight increase from the past years into this particular year. So that would be something that could be worthy of attention and consideration for the potential of being able to look at our staffing levels from a parking compliance standpoint. So now let's talk about the off-street locations, and especially for our weekday occupancy. Now, I want to highlight that on that second column over, these are the number of parking spaces in those locations. And where you see the red, and the number's kind of hard to see there, but it's red because it exceeds 85% occupancy. But what I also want to highlight is that that narrow lot has 15 parking spaces. It's in a premium location, and when our businesses or our employees get to work, they're occupying those spaces. But I have to tell you, that's a good thing, because when you're staying for the day or for a longer term, that's where we want you to park. We want you to park in the off-street locations because we want to keep our on-street spaces available for our customers to have a visit to the downtown, do their shopping and dining, and be able to enjoy the amenities. And we ideally want our employees and our business owners to park in our parking lots and in our parking garage. And that's something of particular importance. But I also want to call attention to our parking structure. As I mentioned, this is a gem for the city, and I know that over the years we've worked on wayfinding improvements and really trying to direct folks into the parking garage, but you can see that we have ample occupancy throughout the day, and this is something that even in the areas where we see the yellow, it's important to recognize that when we look at the balance overall, that opportunity to draw more vehicles into the parking garage is absolutely an opportunity. And you can see from the averages that when we start to look at time of day, we have a little bit of an up and down in the respect of some highs, some lows, but again, adequate resources and available. And the one thing that I can say, having worked with your city for several years, is that you have a very walkable downtown, and the fact that you can access available parking pretty much at any time of the day. Now on the weekends, again, because of the farmers market, you really can see those impacts. And again, the narrow lot being the location that it is and the size that it is, you can see where we're reaching those occupancy targets and thresholds. And you can also see that we have a little bit more increased usage in our parking structure, which is something that we're very proud of, because I also know that this was a big part of the promotion with the farmers market over the years to try to encourage our customers and even our merchants to park in the parking garage. And you can even see that when you look over there on the right side of the screen for the occupancy on the Saturday evenings, you can tell that we are starting to recover from the pandemic numbers, but we haven't quite gotten to the pre-pandemic numbers there, where you can see that in 2019, we were averaging about 43% occupancy on average in our off-street locations, and post or in the middle of pandemic, 21 or 18%, and then just this year we're at 29%. So we still have ample parking locations. And I think that that's something that we want to make sure that the community hears loud and clear, and that again, that there is plenty of places to park. Now, when we talk about turnover in our off-street locations, keep in mind, our hope would be that we see those higher numbers for the longer term periods. But again, we do have good utilization in those locations. It could be higher. And the fact is that still the majority of our customers are staying for less than 3 hours. So when you look at these locations, you can again see that the narrow lots being the convenient location that the narrow lot is, that it's something that you would anticipate based on the size. And the Civic Center had the greatest number of cars turned over, which again comes as no surprise because you have visitors coming into City Hall and or the library, and you would expect that level of transition for various meetings or coming in to do city business. And then on the weekend, you can definitely see for those transition times a little bit longer of a stay on the Saturdays. But again, we are seeing that utilization, and you can see that the numbers are really starting to return to some of those pre-pandemic numbers, and that the Firestone Dolan lot had the greatest number of car turnovers within the 3 hours. And that's something, again, based on the location and the amenities there. It also comes as no surprise. So in conclusion, for the information that we provided here to you, we are starting to see the return towards some of the parking numbers that we had pre-pandemic. We're not quite there yet. Again, there's no recommendation to change really anything other than considering the number of parking compliant staff we have in the field. Our off-street facilities remain underutilized, and we would just simply encourage the city to continue to consider methods of directing our drivers and vehicles to our off-street facilities, especially the garage. One thing I like to highlight is the more people that park in the garage, the more foot traffic we have, the more visibility we have. And that's something that does encourage public safety and visibility and all factors that are very much advantageous for our program. And then honestly, to continue this annual data collection, because it allows you to, again, make data-driven decisions, and it's not based on perception. Just because I can't park right in front of the restaurant that I want to go to, the fact of the matter is I can go right around the corner or go park in the garage. And so I'd say that you're right on track, and your numbers definitely show for themselves that, you're on that, upswing. But I wouldn't say that there's any need to put in paid parking, and to just continue to monitor the data to determine any next steps. And I also should have mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we also presented this information to the Downtown Business Association at a previous meeting. And then I know that we're slated, based on tonight's conversation, to go to the City Council also in April. So with that, I will say thank you very much. I've included our contact information, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Do any commissioners have any questions? Vice Chair Uva.
I don't have any questions, but I just have a comment. You came to the Public Works Committee several years ago, and I served on that committee, and you gave a report just like you did tonight. And I remember the comment that you made was you don't have a parking problem in Downey. You have plenty of parking. People just have to be willing to walk.
Correct. Nothing has changed.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Guerra.
So thank you. I was there for that presentation for the downtown, and I appreciate it. The one thing that came up on there's 76 spots on Downey Avenue. Do you know if that's from Firestone to, is it 3rd or 4th Street, how far down it goes?
I want to say that the study's to 4th Street. I need to reconfirm my map, and I'll make sure that we'll follow up with you all. But if I look at the map, I want to say that it's to 4th.
Right, because that's, everybody's preferred spot and so forth. And we do have, I remember we put 2 green 20-minute parkings right in front of the the cleaners, because do you think we need any more of those temporary 20-minute ones kind of thing?
Based on the occupancy levels, one of the things that was actually one of the results of the recommendations was for those quick turns. Parklets obviously had an effect during the pandemic as well, but I'd say thus far, no. I think that next year, maybe a different conversation. We always know that 100 Downey Ave block face right off of Firestone is obviously the most popular, especially for the businesses served there. But again, you go right around the corner and there's a whole block face that's available. I do want to call out a couple of neat things though too, is that you've added the rideshare app parking locations. There's a lot of little nuances that I have to tell you. There's a lot of cities that aren't that forward thinking. So I really appreciate that when it comes to you being cognizant of that and making incremental changes to the program. And the one thing that we've always talked about in the past is potentially also reducing the 100 block to a 1 hour time limit besides those short-term spaces. But I'd say for right now, status quo, and keep an eye on the data for this next year. And I think next year it could be a different conversation.
So thank you for that. One of my other thoughts, we have this beautiful parking lot that nobody wants to park at because they don't feel safe.
Right.
We have a lot of people, there's, stealing tires and everything else. So what are your recommendations? I mean, from a lighting, security, more security is always welcome, of course. But, we talked about an arm there. If people feel like the bad guys can't get out in a hurry on there, what would be your main recommendation that then later on you can recommend to the city council?
Sure.
Because you're right, it's a gym there, but I wouldn't park there. I'd be scared to park my car there the whole day or any time of that. So what are your thoughts, ma'am?
One of the first things is paint. It may not seem like a lot, but a fresh coat of interior paint with bright colors really makes a difference. The one thing I have to say, in your garage, you actually have good lighting. It's the paint that somewhat dulls the experience. And I can tell you from experience, we have a garage that we whitewashed, floor and ceiling and walls, and the city council thought we invested over $1 million in lighting. We didn't change anything except the paint. And I know that sounds so simple, but that's also an aesthetic issue that starts to have an impact. The cleanliness of the garage is also very important as well, is that in order to encourage community members to park in the garage, it needs to be a clean experience. And so that consistent cleaning is obviously a challenge. And the frequency of patrols obviously is something that is really important. The deterrent for the bad guys, as you say, the reality is they can park right outside and, walk in for that matter. And that's why it's that visibility factor, the see something, say something, element of it. And I will tell you that it doesn't matter what city you're in right now. It's definitely a challenge, and it's not unique to Downey, unfortunately. But I do think that the opportunity to consider camera infrastructure is something that in some garage facilities, I highly recommend license plate recognition technology. But because your garage is so accessible, which is actually a good thing, the fact is the license plate recognition technology wouldn't matter, but having fixed surveillance cameras that are actually able to be monitored would also be a win as well. But I will tell you, it takes an investment in order to get us to that place. But the one thing I will say as well is the more cars that you can get to park in there, the more traffic that you have, and that really gets the flow moving and gets people in and out of there. And that's what really discourages the bad guys from going in there, because someone is going to see them when you really have that frequency of traffic. And unfortunately, I was on your roof deck today just checking things out because that's what I like to do. And I saw they call them sideshows, where the folks are doing the donuts up on your roof deck, unfortunately. And again, you're not alone in that either. And I just really would encourage the community to report when those matters are happening, because the only way we're going to be able to stem that is to be able to really try to, cull those problems. But truthfully, a coat of paint could be one of your starting points as an opportunity to really brighten the garage, and then looking at some of those other elements. The gates are something that we definitely evaluated, because of the way that your garage is designed, it's really not ideal. And then you have an issue of broken gate arms that adds a whole nother element and challenge for maintenance and support. And so I would suggest that that open ingress egress is really what you want to have to invite folks into the garage too. I will tell you one side note. I was in a city this morning, and the assistant parking manager lives in Whittier, and she said, "Oh, where are you going next?" And I said, "I'm on my way to Downey. I'm going to speak to the planning commission." And I was telling her about the parking garage. She comes to your downtown all the time, and this is a person who has been in the parking industry for over a decade. She didn't know you guys had a parking garage. And I was flabbergasted at the fact that she didn't know you had it. She lives in Whittier. She comes down here all the time, and she didn't know you had a parking garage. She knew about the Porto's deck, but she didn't know you had a parking garage. That's the thing when we talk about wayfinding and directional signage. That's the one place that we really could leverage and really showcase the fact that it's there. The more people that park there, the better for your community.
Adding more visibility. I've seen a lot of parking structures that have how many parking spots are available, maybe in the entrance so people can see. It's just, I completely agree with that.
That was approved by the city about a year ago or so.
And still hasn't.
It hasn't gone in, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I've noticed some equipment that we're going to definitely take back and go to the drawing board and work with city staff on to see if we can make some improvements. Honestly, any kind of electronic digital wayfinding from Firestone, that would be a real game changer too, to help direct folks to know that that's an option. Rather than waiting in line to get, into the deck or to circle the block, to just know that they could go directly there, it would be a real win for the community.
So one last question, I promise. So obviously, you're the expert, and you were talking about the arms and stuff. So when I see some of those places that you go, the real popular spots on there, you get 3 hours free parking kind of thing and so forth with an arm on there. You don't think that that's effective, or that could be effective to, to draw the different crowd if you feel like you got free parking for 3 hours? Or
it's definitely, there's a mental aspect there that you're looking for, but the fact is you're open saying it's free regardless. The only reason why I mentioned about the gate arms is because there's a maintenance issue that is significant. And in cities that have substantial numbers of garages, if I told you how many times gate arms got broken, you would be shocked. And I only say the gate arms by themselves. When you have folks, the reason why they get broken is because equipment does malfunction, things happen, people get trapped in there. You also have issues of vandalism and other things like that. And it's the only reason why it's not necessarily ideal. And for your community, a gate arm could be an intimidating factor of, oh, do I have to pay at that point too? So you have literally on your garage free parking, and we still can't get folks to park in there. So I wouldn't say write it off. I would just say that at this point, it's not the first thing that I would suggest for you, because I think for you, it would not only be a deterrent, it would also be a cost and a maintenance issue that would require support that, we still need other resources like on the compliance side.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Duarte?
My only comment was, and I think Mr. Guerra talked about it, and you just brought that up. Last time I think you did the presentation, we talked about the garage and signage and how that would, help, and, just hearing the planner from Whittier not knowing that we have a garage. I think we talked about that last time with the signage. So I know that with COVID and the parklets, was that why it hasn't been implemented yet? Because I know we still have some on 2nd Street.
I'll just defer over to city staff in terms of any capital improvements. I don't want to
ma'am.
speak on behalf in terms of anything for wayfinding signage or any budgetary items.
Unfortunately, I don't have information with the background on the city's progress with various programs. I would have to look into that and get back to the commission.
It was a great presentation. I just find it interesting that City Council approved electronic parking, how many parking spots they have, and it has not yet been implemented. Why Why hasn't it not been
So
implemented? That
there
helps.
are, good question. There's actually signs on the side of the garage, and I was just, when in my drive-through today, what I need to do is go figure out why they're not turned on. So there is equipment mounted on the garage, and I will work directly with city staff post-meeting to figure out why they're not turned on. So we'll definitely be sure and work through staff to report back to you all, but there is equipment mounted. We just have to figure out what the issue of them not being turned on at this point.
It's been a whole year, and I feel any type of electronic signage, I think you're right. Our parking structure is very dull, and it's beige or something like that. And
It's a mauve color. Yeah, it's a little
And-
muted.
small details like that can really help and draw attention to that parking structure. So I just find it interesting that it's been a year and it has not been implemented yet. So that's my only comment for that. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you for having us tonight. I appreciate it.
Does the interim city planner have a report on city council actions?
I don't have a report.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to non-agenda public comment to open up special event items.
Okay, I'll clarify for you. So it looks like the commission's pleasure is to have items 4 and 5 heard at this time. So what you'd like to do is you want to open up the non-agenda consent calendar, other business public comment period at this time. So if anyone wants to speak on actually either 3, 4, 5, or 6, this would be your opportunity to do so. And then we would return to the public hearing items after hearing 4 and 5, is my understanding.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. So right now, we're going to open non-agenda public comment. This is the portion for the agenda provides an opportunity for the public to address the Planning Commission on non-agenda consent and other business items within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission and not listed on the agenda. It is requested but not required that you state your name, address, and subject matter upon which you wish to speak. Please limit your comments for non-agenda items to no more than 4 minutes. Pursuant to the Brown Act, no discussion or action other than a brief response, referral to the city planning staff, or scheduled for a subsequent agenda shall be taken by the Planning Commission on any issue brought forth under this section. I would like to emphasize emphasize that there are additional 3 other business items, numbers 4 and 5, and 6 on the agenda that we'll discuss shortly. Now this is time to provide comment on those individual items.
Hi, good evening. My name is Alexis Suarez. Good evening to the members of the Planning Commission and the city staff. Thank you for your time. I will try to keep it under 4 minutes. I'll do my best. I'm the principal of the 8300 Firestone ownership group. It's the property on the corner of Firestone and Downey. I'm here with my partner, Raul Porto, who's a member of the community. We also have other members of the community that are involved in the property and heavily invested in the property and the benefit of the community. We're here to see the continued success of the community and building on what we can do. And
1 second,
Oh, sorry.
I think, wouldn't she as an applicant for item number 6 have unlimited time and then we can have dialogue? Whether right now this is non-agenda public comment and we can't even correspond with her?
Oh,
So
sorry, I heard
shouldn't
number
you-
6.
So shouldn't we wait for number 6 to have the dialogue?
This is a time to speak on this item because actually items number 4, 5, and 6 are not public hearings. So they're just business items. So this would be the opportunity for anyone to speak on these items.
So you're saying then we can ask questions at this time? Because non-agenda public comment, normally we can't. This is something that's agendized.
Right. So you can ask questions when we hear the particular item.
Okay.
Yeah.
So should I come back for when that item is called?
No, this is your time to speak, actually. And I think we wanted to make sure you got your time. I think we lost about 15 seconds. So if I did the math correctly, so we will continue. You'll have your time. I don't want to cut your time off because we did speak and we want to make sure you get your time. So can we add 15 seconds after the timer ends? So we'll do it like that. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I want to start with saying that I'm very appreciative of the planning department's efforts in reviewing our scenario to redevelop our property. We've worked closely with the city on multiple occasions to design a site plan that would accommodate the downtown specific plan. And thank you, Commissioner Guerra, for your concerns on, wanting to ask us questions about the property. We feel that this is a crucial property in the downtown development district. We did appeal the Mr. Bashmakian's, I'm pretty sure I butchered that, thank you, decision that this is a substantial change to the property because we feel it is not, it is a less than substantial change given the use that we are doing with the property, which is still a restaurant drive-through and adhering to the downtown specific plan. I would like to express other concerns with this property. One is that we're, as I mentioned earlier, heavily invested in bringing a quality tenant that's going to elevate the community and that's going to open the doors to bring other quality tenants to the community. As you all know, we've sat on the property for quite some time, waiting to bring the right type of use. We worked 2 years with the city to entitle the property, and we feel that the designated use is, pretty much it's identical. It's a fine casual restaurant. It has a drive-through component. I do acknowledge that the square footage is slightly different. But the truth is the building as it stands now is archaic and really restricts what we can do with it given, the REA that's in place that was there prior to our ownership, for example. Needs of retailers, of communities, parking, and all of that has changed. So it's been a limiting factor in what we can do with the property. So we do feel that we need to redevelop the property. And so going back to what I was saying is that we are bringing a quality tenant to the market. We're very fortunate, in my opinion, to be able to bring this tenant to the market and the surrounding communities that will attract residents and non-residents. And sorry. I just want to say that I think that there are also some dramatic shifts in the economy and that are taking place. And so there aren't a lot of opportunities for expanding tenants. And the fact that we can bring in this high quality tenant and an elevated concept, I think if we go through the whole motion again, after having worked closely with the city to develop a site plan, and let me just add briefly that with this new tenant that we're talking to, we have met with the city on several occasions to work with the site plan that, again, adheres to what has been approved in the past. And so rather than going through the entire process, run the risk of losing the tenant, run the risk of sitting on that property vacant for years to come, which we all know is a blight in the heart of our downtown. I will also add that I am a founding member and part of the Downtown Improvement District. So I'm actually on the marketing committee. And so I have all these ideas for the community, and I would just hate the opportunity to lose this tenant because we would have to go through the motion again of something that has already been approved. So my appeal is that we just amend the site plan with the current site plan so that we can continue with our efforts to redevelop the property. Okay, that's it. 45 minutes left, or 45 seconds left. Thank you.
I take it I could talk about parking on the public comment. Yeah. Okay. Mike Greenspan, the Jew not going back to Florida. Parking is important, folks. We all love our vehicles, our SUVs, our regular cars, our pickup trucks, whatever. After all, we wouldn't be where we are in this society if we were still in horse and buggy days. Of course, then we'd be wondering where we're going to put those horses and buggies and all the horse shit, literal horse shit that they give us in the community. Well, parking's important. Ever hear about the San Francisco Giants? The owner then, Horace Stoneham, hated New York because there was no parking. Well, he moved it out to the left coast. So parking can make or break you. If you have a limit on the time that you are to park, and it's on Saturday, they're breaking it, it's time to hire some Saturday employees for parking enforcement. We don't need officers, sworn officers, to do it. That's overkill. but parking enforcement would keep the parking and the overparkers in check. Do it at straight time, not somebody raking in their overtime on the weekends. It can be justified financially by having the tickets you write, and people will learn, hey, let's obey the parking regulations or we will get tickets, and we will have to pay them, or else they will be held on our registration at DMV. They'll have you coming and going. So as far as the parking, it's good to have parking. You maybe need to use your social media and everything else to let them know about the unknown parking spot. Parking is very important. Go to the Beverly Center, you don't get any free parking. Even if you buy stuff, you still have to pay parking. Go to Beverly Hills, they give you a couple hours of free parking. That brings people into the shopping district. Found out in Pasadena, they also have free parking. That brings people in. So your free parking is good. Limit it if you want, but enforce it. And I've got a pet peeve about these parking spaces. If a project maybe is going to have 10 spaces, they'll all be compact cars, which then makes them really 5 when people drive their SUVs in there. So have a real parking space and have your minis, or whatever you want to call them, compacts, where you have that, what was that, smart car type of vehicle. So parking's important. People will go elsewhere where they can park, and the businesses would fold up due to lack of parking. So I hope you'll be prudent and wise in doing your parking. One thing, maybe we ought to be looking at the PB zoning, parking buffer. Golly, what idiots on the city council have failed to change that zoning. If you don't have a parking buffer zoning, call it something else. Council after council. What idiots on the council have failed to do something about the parking buffer zoning that went out in 2008, but it's still on the maps. 2023, and that zoning's still on the maps. I just don't get it. Why did they even change it in the first place? But get your act together on the parking. Have places where people can park to do business, and they'll be in your community, and they'll go to the stores. And don't tie it to a purchase like farmer's market or something, because then they'll feel rushed. They'll come out with more stuff and buy more stuff in the community. And this is for the record. Where do I submit?
Be very direct. Fuck parking, period. Just fuck parking. Fucking racist fucking niggers put parking permits and conditions. In the past, people just got there first come, first serve. When I used to go down to Hollywood with my family, first come, first serve. Now you niggers paint all the curbs red. Now you niggers put all these excuse signs up. And some of the people that come from other countries can't even fucking read them because there's so many of them. So fuck parking. Now what Ms. Suarez was talking about, the issue on appeal for this interpretation of this regarding code section of your violation, section 9824.04, parentheses, I for 1 or 2, in parentheses, conditional use permit procedure states, well, let me remind you, I'm not going to read all this into the record because first of all, if you issue a permit, you have to abide by the pattern and practice of that permit. Am I not right, Mr. Attorney? You don't change it in the middle. You don't start it all over. You go based on the permit condition. It's not about adding. It's not about subtracting. If you get a goddamn permit, that's your permit. If you want to change your permit, you need to come back, as she did, and file her appeal. Now, I'm in support of her appeal because you dumb 4 or 5 niggers up there didn't do your job right. And you should waive her permit charges and costs because all they're trying to do is establish their business and not look at Horacio bubble his eyes around and fucking idiot. Idiot. So For the record, section 982006 site plan review procedure states, if there is a substantial change from the original site plan as determined by the city planner, the matter or the plan shall be resubmitted to the city planner. No, fuck you. Go back to city council and let that fat fucking bitch mayor of yours make a change immediately to revise and change your permit into a condition that they will not have to pay any extra cost for a permit. Get it? Real simple math. I don't do numbers in my head like you guys, but I can tell you the facts. In addition to that, on July 21st, 2021, we're in 2023, and you're still fucking people over on these permits, conditions, how to put a sign up, how to regulate the size of the sign. Oh, none of these flashy banner signs. Fuck you. They're trying to survive. How do you expect a white nigger, brown nigger, Jew nigger, Indian nigger, a motherfucker like me to survive if I can't compete on my sign? If I want to put a sign that says I'm a dick or I'm a bastard, that's a sign. There's nothing wrong with it. But you should understand, just like the attorney up there, she don't know shit about these conditional permits. All she knows is to tell you is listen to Mario. But don't listen to Mario. All Mario is a clergyman. And clergymen that rape boys and fuck children are fucked up. That's why that 24-year-old beautiful Asian woman, Miss Ma, M.A. for the record, was fucking young boys 14 years and under. Just like Jose Luis Huizar, a councilman from the city of LA, was fucking his chief of staff and paid her out of my money $170,000 to settle a case of sexual harassment. So the bottom line is, on the record, here are my documents, 42 U.S.C. 1983, fuck you, and Cohen versus California, fuck the draft.
Seeing no more speakers, non-agenda public comment now is closed. Moving forward to consent calendar, we have one item under consent calendar. Do we have a motion to pass the consent calendar? Or does any commissioners have any questions on the consent calendar item? Commissioner, Vice Chair Uva?
No questions.
Commissioner Guerra?
I'm sorry, I do. So I was looking at the general plan here, and there's a couple pages that stood out, okay? Page 22 on the report, okay? And it was talking about housing. And my concern on it, or my question on page 22, the very top, and I guess it's PC consent page 24. So it does talk about the staff facilitating housing opportunities and so forth, redevelopment on underutilized sites and through various outreach items. And I guess my question to that is, how have we facilitated that? We're page 26, we're very much below our RENA numbers, and we're at 10%. And we're not going to get to the numbers that have been established for us. So I'm kind of wondering, what are we doing for outreach and what are we doing to facilitate housing? And we put it in here that we're doing that, so I'm just kind of curious what it is that we're doing.
One of the things that city will be doing is implementing the adopted housing element. So this is one of the objectives that's listed in the housing element. A key component is the effort to amend the zoning code, modify amend the general plan, make changes to the zoning map to facilitate the potential opportunity to develop additional units. So that's one of the first and most substantial thing that will be taking place. We will be sending out requests for proposals within the next day or two to select a consultant who will start the process of this effort to update the zoning code and put in new development standards to facilitate the housing development opportunities. The process will take maybe a year to 2 years, and it will involve workshops, community input, until we get to the point where we bring the matter before the commission and the council for public hearings.
Okay, so right now, if I bring plans for a new housing project on land that I own here, how long will it take me to get those plans approved?
I'm going to ask one of the staff who have regularly worked on projects for multifamily projects in the R3 zone. That's a typical type of residential, high-density residential that we process. What's the typical processing time?
Sure. Our experience in the past is that application typically takes 3 to 4 months.
Okay, that's,
Depending on the size, we do have larger projects such as KB Homes that I'm sure took years to plan out.
well, there's two projects I know of on Foster and Woodruff that's been going on for 4 years, and that goes back and forth. And what I'm told by developers when they come to the counter, that it takes them 10 to 12 months to do that. And I'm just kind of like, if that's what's happening, that's awesome. Okay. I don't buy that because I see and mine's had Tododo, so I understand that. But I'm concerned about these RENA numbers that just were not, I mean, we've done 210 out of the 2,506 that we need to do. So I guess my question is, how do we make sure that it does stay in that time frame? I mean, I guess as long as the zoning's there and everything else on there, you can approve plans in 3 to 4 months if the zoning is right and so forth, because that's awesome. Because I think then we need to advertise that to our developers and our property owners. Hey, we'll approve plan. What I'm saying is I think we need to facilitate that and make it easier to build housing here within the structures that we have. And I think that maybe anecdotally, but I've heard it from 4 or 5 different developers that it takes us a long time.
Commissioner Guerra, I echo the same sentiment. It's not only housing, but also businesses that struggle with not just 3 to 4 months, they're experiencing years. So I spoke to a couple of business owners too, that they feel the same, and it's not those advertisements.
Yeah, I think my whole thing is this report, this general plan progress report, sounds great. When you look at it, and I've read, all 48 pages of it, and when you look at it, it sounds great. Wow, we're doing a great job. But the reality that we seem to feel, at least I do as a resident and as a homeowner here in the city in being involved in the community, it doesn't feel like this. And I hope it is. And I want us to continue to that. But I think we anecdotally and factually see things differently. So I want to make sure that we do incentivize the business. If a business comes to our planning counter and wants to start a new business, how are we helping them to start a new business? Where in here does it give us that? I mean, you have the housing and then you have the business progress report, but I guess I'm asking, how do we then advertise that if that's really that way? I want us to make sure we're business friendly and we're, residential and building and development friendly. And I want to make sure that we're on the record on that. And we're going to approve this general plan progress report because it sounds great and I'm going to vote on it. But I wanted to go on the record that on page 22 and 24, I have concerns that we really do those things. That's all. I just wanted to go on the record on it because if you guys can push those things along, then that's awesome.
Commissioner Guerra, you make excellent points. Not to sound as if I'm defending, but one thing to note, this housing element just got adopted. So this is an 8-year plan. This is the first report since adoption, and there will not be a lot of progress, but what I mentioned earlier with regards to the zoning code overhaul, one of the objectives in that effort, which was approved by the City Council with Commission's recommendation in the housing element, is to streamline the procedures. Right now, the city standards or procedures require public hearings for items that in other cities do not require public hearing items, and it could be handled at the staff level. Maybe approvals are forwarded to the Planning Commission as an information item, for example. But in Downey, many projects involve public hearings, which adds time for applicants. So one of the efforts is to streamline our review process. So within, maybe in 2 years or 3 years, the situation will be different. Also, one more thing to note with regards to the regional housing needs assessment. As you know, cities are not in the business of building, but the objective is to facilitate, to put the zoning in place in order to accommodate that number of units. At the end of the day, it's the marketplace, and the city's effort is to streamline, help advertise, as you mentioned, so that we do everything on our end. The rest, it's the marketplace.
I'm frustrated because I personally know of two projects that I have no financial interest in, one on Woodruff and one on Foster, that the developer puts in plans. It takes 3 to 4 months, and then it comes back with a change. They put it back in a couple of weeks, and it takes 3 or 4 months on there. That's been going on for 5 years, and there's basically no differences on it, on the plan, and they're zoned for that and everything else on those two particular projects. So, and recently I just, a council member met with them out there on the particular job site earlier this week. So I think that's the frustrating part, because when you put it in practice on there, it doesn't seem to fit what we're looking at. But we have 210 total units out of the 6,503 that are needed in the next 8 years, and we're not going to get there. And here's 80 units that would count towards this year that would go in there. But so, anyways, thank you. If that's the goal and that's the plan, and hopefully you can help bring that up to the city council. Maybe they'll change some of the rules on there, and maybe they don't even know about those particular things. So, thank you with that.
Is there anything in our end as a commission can recommend to a council so they can facilitate this whole thing faster, or is it something that staff has to do and then speaks to council to make recommendations?
I believe off of what Art was just discussing in terms of policy changes, you've already done that in terms of the housing element update that we've done, and that it was certified by the state and in October. So you've approved for those changes, as he said, that new housing wouldn't come to you, it'd go straight through plan check, and it'd be working with staff to coordinate the design. So you've already approved some of those policies.
Or policies that can help businesses too?
Yeah.
Also, it's not just housing, but in both aspects, I think will be helping bringing progress.
There are opportunities to do some level of streamlining at this point, so that we're not waiting a year, 2 years for the larger overhaul that we're going to be undertaking, so that at least it alleviates some of the pressure and allows for more streamlined review and action. So that could be done if the commission or council wants to initiate some changes. And we could come back with an item for the commission to discuss to initiate some changes that staff could be recommending at on a future agenda.
If we can add that to a future agenda item, I would greatly appreciate that. Commissioner Guerra, would that be okay?
Just how do we expedite plans?
Yeah.
How many planners, plan checkers do we have?
This is it. This is the planning team.
Yeah.
Okay, because we
Great
had,
team.
and I know before, we used to farm it out, right? So I think that's not you guys' fault, but I think that's part of the problem too, is we don't have enough plan checkers.
Yeah.
That's not your fault. You guys want to hire more to help you out. I get that too. But I think I remember one time there was only one person that we referred to, and this was last year, and that person got COVID. So we had to wait 4 months for that person to get better or so forth, and certain plans set there. So at least that's what, a couple of developers were told. But so anyways, I think is how can you find whatever you could do to help expedite it, and if you can bring it back here and we can make a recommendation through the city council, that would be awesome.
As an advisory board to council.
As an
so we
advisory
can-
board of the council, that would be great.
Just to clarify, there's also the plan check process involves other departments and divisions like engineering and building. Planning is just one of the spokes in the hub.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Duarte?
Just my only comment and question is, just to piggyback a little bit what Mr. Ortiz and Mr. Guerra stated is, the elephant in the room is we've had a lot of, just a lot of change in this department here. I just want to know if that's kind of impacted, because I hear the same things from either housing or business. Hey, we've turned this in, we're waiting, they tell us to come back. And I don't know, I'm just asking, is that in this last year and a half or so, has the great turnover that we had, has that really impacted things, or is it other issues?
I'm sure the turnover does impact when you have a new staff taking over a project. There is the lack of, the individual doesn't have the history behind that, so that'll take that has an effect. There's also, as I mentioned, some of our procedures in the city that have been adopted maybe 12, 13 years ago that, as I mentioned earlier, require even exterior modifications technically require a public hearing, planning commission action, which then adds to the process. And what may be lacking in our procedures is a gradation where a minor project could be done at staff level, and the more complicated, the larger project, which may have an impact on the community, those would be the ones that should come before the planning commission for a public hearing. So the way our code is structured, technically everything has to come before the planning commission. So that could add processing time when there's only 4 planners and you have tens of applications coming in at the same time.
The only comment I will add to that is that the staff, you guys have been doing a great job. I don't want our comments to discourage you guys. Doing an amazing job. So hopefully we can approve this and hopefully bring back recommendations so that we can recommend to council at some other meeting sooner rather than later, please. With that, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept it with the discussion items that we had talked about.
I'll second it.
Motion passes. Moving along to special event permit application PNN-23-00005. Will the interim city planner introduce staff making the presentation?
Yes, Associate Planner Irving Anaya will make the presentation.
Commissioners and members of the audience. The item before you is a request for a special event permit to allow a 4-day fundraising carnival event at 11040 Brookshire Avenue. The site is Downey High School. The subject site is within the R2 and R3 residential zones as shown on the map. The site is located at the northeast corner of Firestone Boulevard and Brookshire Avenue and surrounded by a variety of land uses. Downey High School Boosters Club has hosted a fundraising carnival event for several years. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, the event was not held in the last 3 years. This year, the temporary event will be held May 26th through the 29th. The hours of the carnival event will be from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Friday, 1 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday, and 1 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Monday. As previously held, the carnival will be located at the southwest corner of the school within the south parking lot. The event parking will be located in the north parking lot along Brookshire Avenue near the school tennis courts, and in the east parking lot near Lakewood Boulevard adjacent to the baseball fields. Visitors will be able to access the carnival from 3 different locations, one along Firestone Boulevard, another along Brookshire Avenue, and the third through the school from the baseball parking lot. The overall carnival layout will remain as the previous years. The event will have a variety of attractions such as food and game booths, small amusement rides for children, larger rides for adults, a fun house, Ferris wheel, and a super slide. The site will also be equipped with portable restrooms and hand sinks, trash receptacles, school security, and Downey police officers to monitor the site. The city's Development Review Committee reviewed the requests and materials. Standard conditions were provided, similar to the last time the event was held. These conditions of approval were included as part of tonight's resolution. And therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve a special event permit to allow a temporary carnival event on May 26th through the 29th at 11040 Brookshire Avenue, Downey High School. And this concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Does the Planning Commission have any questions of staff? Commissioner, Vice Chair Uva.
I don't have any questions.
Commissioner Guerra? Commissioner Duarte?
None.
And I have none. Thank you. Does the applicant wish to provide any comment?
Good afternoon, Commissioner Board. My name is Ismael Chavez. I'm the booster president for Downey High School. And I would like to say that this is an event that we have had several years in the past, except due to the fact that COVID didn't allow us, we weren't able to do that. But we're here to ask or answer any questions that you may have in regards to the permission for us to allow him to have the carnival permit.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions? No? Thank you.
Okay.
Does planning staff have any recommendation?
Yes, approve PLN 23-00005, allowing a temporary carnival event at 11040 Brookshire Avenue.
Thank you. It's now time for the planning commission to deliberate. Does the commission have any questions at this time, or would like the commission like to discuss the item? Vice Chair Uva.
No questions. Just wish you the best of luck.
Commissioner Guerra.
No questions. Go Vikings.
Commissioner Duarte.
None. As a Downey High football alum, good luck.
And I have none. Thank you. What is the pleasure of the planning commission? May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Second.
To approve it.
We can vote.
You guys.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is just to remind the applicant that we already discussed the items, non-agenda public comment. Thank you. Just to remind, the action of the planning commission will be final unless the matter is appealed to the city council with appropriate fee within the next 15-day period as set forth in the city's municipal code. This is now to move along to a special event permit application, PLN-23-00026. Will the interim city planner introduce staff making the presentation?
Yes, again, Associate Planner Irving Anaya will make the presentation.
Good evening once again. The item before you is a request for a special event permit to allow a one-day car show fundraiser hosted by Downey Rancho Los Amigos Kiwanis Club at 11040 Brookshire Avenue. Once again, the site is Downey High School. The subject site is zone R2 and R3 residential zones. Similar to the carnival, the site is located in the northeast corner of Firestone Boulevard and Brookshire Avenue and surrounded by a variety of land uses. The Downey Rancho Los Amigos Kiwanis Club has hosted the car show in the past at this site. This year, the event will take place on Saturday, April 1st from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. As previously held, the car show event will be located in the southwest corner of the school within the south parking lot. The event parking will be located once again in the north parking lot along Brookshire Avenue near the school tennis courts, and in the east parking lot along Lakewood Boulevard adjacent to the baseball fields. Visitors will be able to access the event from 3 different locations, one along Firestone Boulevard, another along Brookshire Avenue, and the third through the school from the baseball parking lot. The event layout will consist of merchandise and food vendors with some tables and umbrellas along the south perimeter of the lot, car show vehicles in the center and on the north side of the parking lot, a stage at the north, and portable restrooms and hand sinks at the northwest and northeast corners. The applicant will be providing private event security to monitor the site. Similar to the carnival, the city's development review committee reviewed this request and materials. Standard conditions were provided similar to the previous events. These conditions of approval were included as part of tonight's resolution. And therefore, staff recommends that the Plan Commission approve a special event permit to allow a one-day car show event on April 1st at 11040 Brookshire Avenue in Downey High School. And this concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Do any commissioners have any questions of staff? Vice Chair Uva.
No questions.
Commissioner Guerra,
No, sir.
and Commissioner Duarte.
None for me.
Thank you. Just for clarification, because this is other business, those business items were discussed a non-agenda consent calendar opportunity for the applicant to speak at that time. So we're going to move on to, does the planning staff have any recommendations?
Yes, approve PLN 23-00026, allowing a one-day car show fundraiser at 11040 Brookshire Avenue.
Thank you. It is now time for the planning commission to deliberate. Does the commission have any questions at this time? Or would like the commission like to discuss the item? Vice Chair Uva,
No questions.
Commissioner Guerra.
Hail Kiwanis, I will make a motion that we approve this. I'm a Rotarian, but we still love them.
Commissioner Duarte.
I would second the motion made by Mr. Guerra.
We have seems like we have a motion already. First and a second. Perfect, thank you. All right, so the action of the Planning Commission will be final unless the matter is appealed to the City Council with appropriate fee within the next 15-day period as set forth in the city's municipal code. Now we're gonna rewind and go back to site plan review condition use permit application PLN-21-0018. Does the principal planner have proof of publication?
Yes, Chair.
Will the interim city planner introduce staff making the presentation today?
Yes, Senior Planner Gerardo Marquez will make the presentation.
Item number 6 then? We got 2 public hearings then before that? This isn't a public hearing? That's a public hearing.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, and members of the
This is
audience.
a public hearing, this is a public hearing. So why don't we do that instead of, you do whatever you want, but this is gonna take a long time. Public hearing. Okay.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, and members of the audience. The next item before you tonight is PLN 21-00181, which is a site plan review and conditional use permit at 12603 Paramount Boulevard. And it's for a site plan review to allow the conversion of an existing auto repair building into a convenience market, and a conditional use permit to allow the off-sale of beer and wine. As seen here, the subject site is on the southwest corner of Paramount Boulevard and Imperial Highway, and it holds a zoning designation of C2 General Commercial, similar to the sites to the north, south, east, and west. Here we have an aerial of the site. The site is an approximately 13,258 square foot lot with an existing 1,393 square foot service station with ancillary auto repair service. The service station does provide for 4 gas pump islands. Here's an existing street view of the site. The applicant, as I'll show in a upcoming slide, the applicant is proposing significant facade treatments and upgrades to improve the site, in addition to the conversion of the service area into a convenience store. Here's an existing site plan of the site. I'll zoom into the floor plan, the existing floor plan in a bit. Wanted to show the site plan as no additional square footage is part of this proposal. It's a simple conversion of the existing square footage. Parking will remain the same, and parking will meet our development standards per Downey Municipal Code. Here we have a zoom in of the existing floor plan. As you can see, the site does provide for 5 roll-up service bay doors, all of which will be closed off and will provide for an upgrade to the facade. Here's the proposed floor plan. As you can see, some of the service bay doors will be changed out to windows, and the floor plan does show a typical layout of convenience store usage. And here's the proposed facade. As you can see, the service bay doors have been closed off and replaced with some glazing. The applicant is proposing to provide a combination of stucco facade treatment along with stone veneer, which will also be carried out over to the gas pump canopies. As part of the application, a conditional use permit component was also submitted. As seen here is, the conditional use permit component was for the off-site sale of beer and wine. As seen here, the alcohol sales area is highlighted in yellow. The area that is going to be occupied for alcohol vending is approximately 1.5% of the gross floor area. Just kind of highlighting the significance that this will be an ancillary use to the main convenience store proposal. This project was presented to the Development Review Committee. No departments expressed concerns or opposition over the project, and standard conditions were issued. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you for the presentation. Does the Planning Commission have any questions of staff? Vice Chair Uva.
Just one question. The existing square footage is the 1393 of that structure that's the existing?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Yes.
It just doesn't look that big.
I know.
Looks tiny.
I know.
So it's going to remain that size?
That is
There's going to be
correct.
you said no additional square footage?
That is correct.
Okay, got it. Yeah, it's a beautiful building.
Thank you.
Commissioner Guerra.
No, I think my only question is the ingress and egress, those are going to stay the same, basically?
So I know currently existing, there are 4 points of access as part of a public works, public right-of-way improvement. 2 of those will be sealed off. And then, so there will be 2 access points, one onto Imperial Highway and another off of the Paramount Boulevard. In addition to that, I do believe there is sort of like a reciprocal ingress and egress access point to the adjacent lot.
Right.
To my knowledge, there is no reciprocal ingress and egress.
Okay, there's not going to be no restriction to that. It seems that, there's a little elevation difference between their lot and the Crown Cleaners and so forth. Is that going to be remediated, or is that just going to stay the same? There's a couple of poles that are sideways there that have been hit by cars too and so forth?
To my knowledge, that's not a part of the scope of work. But if the applicant would like, I know the applicant is available and he might be able to provide some insight on that.
Because that's always seems to be a concern down there, and I think it's going to be for them as a business practice, not that we're going to intervene in somehow, but I think that always is a concern there. And I think that this project is an upgrade to what's there, but I think that's...
Thank you.
Hopefully they'll work on that, and we'll talk to the applicant when that time comes, but no further questions, sir.
Commissioner Duarte.
No questions for staff.
And I have none. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Before I open the public hearing and call the applicant or his or her representative, this will be the time for the Planning Commission to disclose any pre-hearing site visits or pre-hearing discussions that the commissioners may have had about the project. Vice Chair Uva.
No questions.
Commissioner Guerra.
Thank you for wanting to improve your property there, so I'm glad to hear that. I live a mile from there, so that's a that's going to be a benefit to our community there. I do have concerns on the south
Commissioner
driveway
sorry,
between
Commissioner
there.
Guerra, this is if you have any pre-hearing site visits or peer discussions of the have you visited the site project or discussed it before?
I went to Starbucks there yesterday, okay, and I got out of my car and looked at it. Yes, I did.
And Commissioner Duarte.
Right next door. Yeah, I'm sure that.
We'll get to that right now.
Yeah. So
No disclosures for me.
And I have none. The public hearing is now open. Will the applicant or his or her representative please come forward to give testimony?
Good evening. My name is Mohammed Bahmani. With your comment about the building, we are since 2020 in this process. And one of the things that, not knowing that if I touch this property because of the size of it, it will be no. So we wanted to add a little bit, like about 180 foot or something, and the whole project denied because the size of the property based on the regulations doesn't allow anything. And one of the reasons, if you look at the last time that we did something to this is 1980 something. And at that time, just we wanted to change the color of the building. We had to go through the permitting. And again, I knew that this site, if I touch it, then I will be in trouble. The Public Works wanted me to give him a little piece of land for the like right turn. And I was adamantly against it. I said, you have to take me to court because if you touch this, then I go to the city next time. And that's why I came to get this permit now. So if there is any obstacle, because now I have to give him a little bit of my land, they will be a little lenient. Oh, I was wrong. These are before you guys got involved. So anyway, that's what the reason that we didn't touch it. We said, okay, just that thing, and we don't do anything. We just do the changes that is necessary. We are trying to be, I know it is like a sore thumb in the city. I have, my gas stations is my business. I have one gas station, I built it in the city of Compton. It's the top-notch gas station in the AM, PM business. It's the top seller, even the new franchisees that they want to get trained, they will come to my facility. They will get trained over there for 2 weeks to show them how to do things. And the reason that is, this one is because of the small, I approached the previous owner of the property in the back before the Starbucks built. I begged him, lease me something, some piece of it, so I can demolish this, build a huge, nice facility, but I couldn't. So I really appreciate you guys are considering to approve this plan because I know it will make a difference.
Do any of the commissioners have questions of the applicant? Vice Chair Uva.
Sir, I commend you on doing what you're doing, taking all these steps and being persistent. That's really great. That's really admirable of you to do this. This building that we see here is a complete turnaround for that corner. It's going to look wonderful, and I'm very, very proud and very happy for you to do this.
Thank you.
Commissioner Guerra.
I echo those comments. I've been seeing that building there for many years. I represented that district on there from 2006, 2014. So I know that whole situation, your whole lot right there. And thank you for investing money in our community on there. I'm sorry you've had those issues. I wish those things could have been, fixed in the past, and because you should have been able to build a nice whatever you wanted there, especially when you fit into these things. So I think my question to you is, So you're right. You know, the south, you know, when you go into from your property into the Crown Cleaners, if you will, and so forth, there's an elevation difference. Yeah, and there's the poles that keep getting hit by the cars. It's not your fault. I mean, that's people go into that lot to go into now the new market there and stuff like that. Are you planning on doing something there to betterment that particular?
The problem is that I already have been paying off the frivolous lawsuits, you know, these drive-by
Right.
People that they claim that they're advocate for handicapped people.
Okay.
So they come over there. 4 times I paid each time $10,000. They never ask for any actual improvement. Give us this money, we walk away. The problem is that if you look, the site is like this, even with that ditch. If we want to lower that one, then we will be, the handicap that wants to go, it has more than, 2% that is allowed. On this plan, even on this plan, we had our handicap on the side, and then we got a lawsuit about 6 months ago that measured everything, and for each point, we had to pay like $4,000 for each infraction. Here, the wheel goes like this, another one. So now I had the plan redo the whole yard, and we moved the parking next to the area that you're talking. That is the handicap parking now. It is a less distance, and it's like nicer, and it doesn't have a big landing or whatever. So I'm afraid if we do, because the next landlord, I don't even can talk to them. I tried for years and years I told them, you have so much big property, give me some of it. You want to sell it, whatever, name your price. You want to lease it, name price. You are not using it, and let's do something, but it didn't work. I don't know if I want to do that, what would be the obstacles?
Well, have you considered putting a fence between yours and the Crown Cleaners there so that you don't
I
have
can't
that
put a fence,
situation?
but that would be hampering people that they want to go from my property, they want to go back to this supermarket. I've been here since 1992.
Yes.
And that have been like that. And believe it or not, this was my first business. And this was my jumping point. So the city of Downey and this site has a sentimental value for me. It was at the time that I had to borrow $40,000 on my house to put money down here to buy it. And so that was a good investment that I did, and I received a lot of benefit from the city. That's why I'm not leaving.
Sure. We appreciate that. And sir, I commend you on the beautiful building. I'm concerned the beautification there on that south end won't be as nice as it can be, but I have no further questions. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioner Duarte?
I don't have any questions, just a comment. The new building, the renderings, it looks like a great improvement, so. Thank you.
And I echo those same sentiments, so thank you.
You're welcome. And as a being business, I have to put my nose on one of the previous discussions that you guys had about these plans that they take time because of the staff shortages. Why you guys are not using, as a business person, you tell me the I have to charge you, let's say $20,000 for your plans to get approval because I have to send it to the private sector. Because the private sector has everything, they can do it fast and they can stamp it. I've seen in city of Atlanta, I have business. You take the plans and the charges sometimes is astronomical, but in the grand scheme of things, you know that, okay, it takes you 3, 4, 5, 6 months and your plans are ready. And you go build.
And we'll,
So you guys think how you can businesses around.
Thank you.
Architects around, engineers around. You can make it like a private sector, public sector.
Thank you. We made those recommendations, so we appreciate it. Thank you. Has there been any correspondence in favor or opposition?
No correspondence.
Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor or opposition of the application?
Who would have thought on the south end of a property owned between the city of Downey and the gentleman, Mr. Fred Cohen, representing Mr. Mohammed Bahamini, would realize that technically the city of Downey is responsible to bring that ADA 2010 standard at that south end corner, for the record. And I'm going to submit a claim against Downey to work with the owner of that business, and the city of Downey will fix it. The same way I made you spend $21 million to fix the ramps and the curb cuts in the city of Downey because you neglected it for 40 years. But Mr. Guerra don't give a fuck. He's lived here how long? He never gave a fuck about a disabled or an elderly person or someone's family member that comes from another country that's disabled. But I care, because that's why I'm talking about it, because I'm trying to mediate a condition that Downey will get out there and fix this problem, Mr. Guerra, on the south end that you discussed. Because if not, that regulation is equal to discrimination. And to punish someone who has a good credibility on permits, processing his permits, putting cash money down for permits, and have to wait months, sometimes years, to get these issues resolved, once again, on the record, has become a pattern and practice by the Planning Commission here in Downey, because you guys are straining these people with one arm behind their back and demanding more money for a fucking permit, when you could fast track this shit. You could expedite it, cut the red tape, and give these people what they need to proceed with their business. It's a win-win for both. Downey, it's a win-win for the owners of their business, because they're bringing and attracting people into Downey to see their beautiful facilities in Downey. People like to spend their money in Downey. And the Beverly Hills of Downey will pay off for the owners and pay off for Downey when it comes to taxes. Now, I wouldn't add not one fucking inch of a square foot into a property in Downey, because your taxes will go up significantly into thousands. And the dumb attorney won't relate to that, because the oral written evidence is what I presented. And she knows that. That's why she, too, understands that on the south end, there needs to be an issue resolving this ADA 2010 standard and get the owner and the city of Downey of that property to fix the problem. Otherwise, it's discrimination on item number 1, PLN 2100181, for the record.
Seeing there's no more speakers, the public hearing is now closed. Does the planning staff have a recommendation?
Chair, there was public comments, so if you wanted to have the applicant, if he has any additional comments for rebuttal, he has an opportunity. You might want to ask him.
Would you like time for a rebuttal?
I don't know
Neither do we, don't worry. Okay, thank you. There is no opposition, but thank you. Does the planning staff have a recommendation?
Staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve PLN number 21-00181, which is site plan review and conditional use permit, the resolution with the resolution that's attached.
Thank you. This is time for the planning commission to deliberate. Does the commission have any questions at this time, or would the commission like to discuss the item? Vice Chair Uva.
No questions?
Commissioner Guerra.
I have no questions, and I'm ready to make a motion to approve this.
Commissioner Duarte.
No, just other than I said, it looks great. So there's a motion I will second.
We have a second, a first and a second. May we take a vote? The application was approved. Congratulations. The action of the Planning Commission will be final unless the matter is appealed to the City Council with appropriate fee within the next 15-day period as set forth in the city's municipal code. Now, this is a time to set aside for the public hearing for Planned Sign Program Permit Application, PLN-22-00138. Does the principal planner have a proof of publication?
Yes, Chair.
Will the Itcham City Planner introduce staff making the presentation?
Yes, Assistant Planner Abraham Luna will make the presentation.
Good evening, Honorable Chair and members of the Planning Commission. The item before you is a request for a new planned sign program for a multi-tenant commercial building located at 10303 Lakewood Boulevard. The subject site is Zone C1, Neighborhood Commercial, along with properties to the south. Properties to the north are Zone C2, General Commercial, and properties to the east and west are zoned R1, Single Family Residential. The subject site is 48,592 square feet and is improved with a 15,440 square foot multi-tenant commercial building located on the west side of Lakewood Boulevard, south of Florence Avenue. As previously stated, the site is improved with a multi-tenant commercial building, which you can see in the street image on the screen. Within this image, you can also see the existing signage consisting of outdated box signs, which are also known as cabinet signs. The planned sign program will allow a total of 10 exterior wall signs and 2 secondary wall signs. The secondary wall signs will be allowed for the corner tenants, which are located on the northern and southern portions of the building. The sign program sign standards are consistent with the city's standards found in our municipal code. Standards on the screen are kind of blurred, but it does reference the maximum allowed square footage for each tenant. Standards such as the maximum allowed sign area should not exceed 1.5 square feet per linear footage of tenant's frontage. The secondary wall sign shall not exceed half of the allowed primary wall sign and not to exceed the square footage for the primary wall sign. The program also complies with the code for maximum width of 75% of the tenant frontage. The maximum logo area cannot exceed 25% of the sign copy area. And the sign program does vary from the code when it comes to the letter height, which is a minimum of 12 inches and a maximum of 18 inches per line of text. Additional standards include that all wall signs to be internally illuminated with LED channel letters similar to those shown on the screen. In order to gain a consistent sign design, the sign program will require a font to be a Q variable concept bold, which was selected by the property owner and the applicant. No color was selected to be included in the sign program, but a condition was added to the resolution where the submittals of colors should be approved by the city planner. This final slide illustrates the proposed elevation renderings for the future wall signs that will be installed on the multi-tenant commercial building. Recently, the building was painted to update the building's actual facade. And this concludes staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Does the Planning Commission have any questions of staff? Vice Chair Uva.
No questions.
Commissioner Guerra. Commissioner Duarte.
No, just comment. When I originally looked at this, I thought this had come before us last year. I didn't know this was actually 2 different lots from the Apollo Center.
Yeah.
So I think this is, just in line with that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
It looks good.
And I have no questions. Thank you.
Wasn't that one done already, the signs? That's the other building right next door, right?
Yeah.
Because that looks good. So that's the one you guys approved last year? Okay. So this is 2 separate property owners out of
It
curiosity?
is 2 separate
But
properties.
they're going to
yeah.
do the same concept on there, which really
Yeah.
improved the other one, right?
I actually one question just popped up. I know we approved of a project, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, on Florence and Paramount, the one next to Kyoto Sushi, those property, and then we did the signage. They all have the same signage font, color green and red, and that was all that was approved for them. It just looks so
Generic?
It just doesn't look like, something I would appreciate for a business. They're not giving their sign colors. Is that something completely different? They're not going to do that in this project, right? Just to clarify.
So, correct. The colors are selected by the tenant and the property owners. In order for us to approve it, the city planner does have to approve it when they submit it for the sign permit.
I just hate it to go to that same generic, just does not add
It gives
character
more
to that
variety.
building. Yeah. So I'm hoping that we take that into consideration. So thank you.
And looking at that, that same thought that made me think about too. On page 3, when you have the different variations of signs here, those are approved, right? You can put my logo next to, my sign there and so forth to a point, right? But when I'm looking at the examples here.
Correct. I believe if your question is, are more other signs allowed?
Okay.
Is that your question?
No, I guess my question is, I think to customize it, if, I have one of those property owner or one of those businesses there, I could put, Mario's and there's my logo on it as long as it's within this reason, right? So each one can still be a little bit different.
Exactly.
They don't have to be generic green
just
like that. Okay. All
remember
right,
doing
just want to make sure. You scared me there for a minute. Okay.
I just remember that, and I don't want to make the same vote on that. So before I open the public hearing, call the applicant or his or her representative. This will be the time for the planning commissioners to disclose any hearing sites visits or pre-hearing discussions that the commissioners may have had about the project. Vice Chair Uva?
Other than just driving by and shopping in that shopping center, that would be it.
Commissioner Guerra?
No, the same comment, almost.
Commissioner Duarte?
No disclosures.
And I have none. Thank you. The public hearing is now open. Will the applicant or his or her representative please come forward to give testimony?
Yes, I'm James Weston. I'm the authorized representative for the licensed contractor on this project. I don't have a lot to add. I really appreciate Mr. Luna and his help on this. He did a great job presenting this. To kind of go a little bit farther into what you had asked, this is more of an outline for what the signs can be there. So we put restrictions on minimum, maximum, things of that nature and how they're done, but not necessarily the specific design. And we do encourage, obviously, a creative design that is aesthetically pleasing and brings the area up. And I'd also like to applaud the owner of the property for bringing this property up to a more modern and, again, aesthetically pleasing look. As you've seen, the surrounding properties are also being rehabilitated, so it's nice to see this also coming up with paint and new signs and other improvements.
Any questions from the commission? Vice Chair Uva?
No questions other than it's a lovely improvement.
It is.
Commissioner Guerra?
Same comment, actually.
Commissioner Duarte?
No comments from me.
And I have none. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there any correspondence in favor or opposition of the application?
No correspondence.
Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor or opposition of the application? Please come forward now.
Ideas of science. So I'm here on another intervention of PLN 22000138 Plan Sign Program. And I'm here in support of the owner and the appellant, first name James, I believe, because I see that there's an improvement. And there's nothing wrong with improvement as long as the city and the inspectors of Downey are, a little on the curb when it comes to litigating the construction of the sign. A lot of times you say, oh, you're 1 inch off, you think you can move it again? Well, I don't got fucking time to move the sign right now, bro. I just wanted to light up or stand out so people can come to my business. I've been losing money. That's one standpoint of it. But the idea here is discussion. And I was here about 2 years ago when we had that discussion about the other signs, the fluorescent lights and all these blinking stuff going on in some of the businesses. And I told your fat mayor, the fat mayor of Downey, Miss Fatty Frometta, for the record, you know, you don't know shit. All you do is talk a good talk, mayor. But if you really cared about businesses, maybe you would give them a 50% less charge per sign on the permit process. So that way, people don't feel like they're being tangled up in another expense. And, you know, yes, we all like, you know, some type of aesthetic look to something new because it makes you feel like, damn, I'm in a clean fucking city. Not like that shithole place called Los Angeles where your fucking faggot mayor, Eric Garcetti, has signs all over that look like shit. And the presentation in this article here has good dimensions. It has good view. I can read it legibly without my glasses, without using a magnifier, without demanding that I get large print. But I got it because I could ask that here. But I'm part of Mr. Lee R. Wesson's application. I'm glad you guys are working with them. I'm working with the business owners to approve this and get it going and get it done. Rápido. Because without rápido, the appellant and his businesses and the people on his land lose out. And I hate to see people lose out. Just like when I was here 2 weeks ago about the Muslim, or I'm sorry, the Quran church. That was great, giving them a cut on their permit. Thank you.
Mike Greenspan, sign, everywhere a sign. Remember that song? Well, some signs can be helpful. Believe it or not, I'm driving down the road. I don't know the neighborhood or I don't know the city I'm going to, been to a different place. I rely on billboard signs. I might know where to get something to eat, where I can maybe get lodging, where I can even get some gas. So I don't walk around with that 1 gallon can looking for a gas station. So they can be helpful. Now, perhaps we shouldn't have them flashing because that could be distracting to drivers, but some kind of illumination, attractive, aesthetically pleasing sign. Very important. And as the previous speaker said, don't get all hung up on, oh, it's an inch too big or it's this. I mean, work with the person. If it's a minor violation, if it's something that really doesn't make a difference one way or the other, but your code is strict. It was passed by the city council under Mario Guerra, and we can't deviate from it. You know, that's when you chase the businesses out too. Bye, Downey, I'm gonna go elsewhere where they're not as mean to us. So work with them. As a nephew of mine did his graduate work in Chicago, he told me a restaurant got closed down. He said, that's rare in Chicago. They usually try to work with you, but this establishment couldn't be worked with. So you have to have, I mean, even in Chicago, they try to work with the businesses that might be in violation of things. You know, they don't just come in, slam, close you down. So hopefully we aren't going to slam and close people down over a sign or chase them out. I came from a town where Sears almost decided not to have its warehouse. And the mayor got up and said, over a road. Well, other reasons they don't have the place there anymore. Sears has financial problems. But when you nitpick on things, that's when you're in trouble. The signs are good. If it says in here, if it finds out that it's detrimental, then we work on it afterward. So let's see if it gets accepted in the community. Excuse me, it doesn't keep people up at 3 in the morning because it's one of those billboards, those digital billboards that are nothing but a nuisance. A nuisance backed by lots of money, of course. So therefore, tough shit. Residents, you're going to have to put up with our flashing billboard, our digital billboards that change every 15 seconds or something. No, a stable sign that's not changing all the time, that's pleasing to the eye. They'll bring in business that you guys collect taxes, things like that. Thank you.
Seeing there's no more speakers, would the applicant care for a rebuttal? Thank you. The public hearing is now closed. Does the planning staff have a recommendation?
Staff recommends the Planning Commission to approve Plan Site Program PLN 22-00138 and adopt the attached resolution.
Thank you. It is now the time for the planning commission to deliberate. Does the commission have any questions at this time, or would the commission like to discuss the item? Vice Chair Uva.
No questions?
Commissioner Guerra.
No questions.
Commissioner Duarte.
None for me.
And I have none. What is the,
I move to, motion to adopt PLN -22-00138.
do I have a second?
I will second it.
Thank you, sir. This
Thank
is
you.
an improvement.
The action of the planning commission will be final unless the matter is appealed to the city council with appropriate fee within the next 15-day period as set forth in the city's municipal code. At this time, we're gonna take a 5-minute break. So now this is time to set aside for appeal of code interpretation, PLN-23-00031. Will the interim city planner introduce staff making presentation?
So I'll be making the presentation, the brief presentation on this appeal. On July 21st, 2021, the Planning Commission approved a site plan review and a conditional use permit application to allow remodeling of an existing 12,854 square foot two-story commercial building at 8300 Firestone Boulevard. And that project encompassed the creation of 4 tenant spaces, and one of the tenant spaces was to be a 3,000 square foot, just barely over 3,000 square foot drive-through restaurant. The appellant desires to propose a different project. It's a drive-through restaurant, and staff reviewed the plans, and per 2 sections of the code where it mentions under section 9824.04, where there's a substantial change from the original site plan, such plan shall be referred to the commission for action under the procedures of section 9820 site plan review. And under that section, it states if there is a substantial change from the original site plan as determined by the city planner, the matter or plan shall be resubmitted to the city planner, subject to all the provisions of this section. The code does not define what substantial change is. So we have to utilize common definition of the word substantial, which typically means significant, large, big. And so staff reviewed the 2 sets of plans, the plans that were approved by the Planning Commission in 2021, and the plans of the revised project that were submitted by the appellant. And we compared the 2, and in the staff report, there's a table that shows the difference in square footages. And based on the difference, staff felt that the change is substantial, which means that it has to go back to the Planning Commission in accordance to the code. The appellant, as she mentioned earlier, that she does not think the changes are substantial. Staff does understand and recognize that the project has positive attributes. For example, with regards to the front of the revised project, there's no parking area. That's being removed, which is more pedestrian friendly and more fitting with the downtown area. They're both drive-through restaurants, and the drive-through lane is in the same general area as previously approved. So there are similarities in the project, but the reason why staff made that determination, again, strictly based on the word substantial, and we just compared the 2, and that was the reasoning for making the determination. And therefore, as mentioned in the staff report, staff's recommendation is to deny the appeal and uphold the city planner determination. And of course, the Planning Commission could look at the facts, and you have the plans before you, and you could come up with the determination that appellant's reasoning is appropriate, and you could grant the appeal and allow the applicant to move forward with the revised plans without having to go back to the Planning Commission. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you for the presentation. Does the Planning Commission have any questions of staff? Commissioner Guerra.
I do. I have a few on the second page on the review of the comparison. So now the building, the approved plans are the building is going to be towards the rear along Downey Avenue, right? You say the proposed, it says here to the rear. On there, isn't it more on Firestone, the building itself?
The proposed would be towards the corner of Firestone and Downey.
Okay, so that's better, right, than the existing building that you have there now with a little bit of parking in the front and mostly going to be in the back?
Yeah, that, like I mentioned before, it is a better situation with regards to the frontage.
Okay, and then as far as the even the exterior design, using the old-fashioned stone veneer that's there versus a new modern building that fits in with the downtown. You know, you got Downey Landing across there, you got Porto. So even from the exterior design, it seems like a better project, right? I mean, I'm looking at your comparison, your approved versus proposed. So your approved plan that says is, you know, use of existing stone veneer. So basically, you're using the same older buildings that are there, leaving the parking the way it is, right?
Yeah, that table just compares what was approved previously compared to what's proposed.
Okay,
Exactly.
all right. So this is what I'm getting at. It seems like this is a better plan for that standpoint. The parking is still, I mean, excuse me, the drive-through is still basically the same.
It's basically the same general area as previously approved, correct?
Okay, so but it comes down to the interpretation of the similarities kind of thing, because I'm looking at this and I see, you know, it requires less parking. It was 3 buildings versus now 1. Okay, so it's kind of better design. The drive-through's the same. And, you know, I think it's going to be better from a traffic standpoint to have the building in the front versus having that goofiness of some parking in the front and the back. So from an interpretation standpoint, I know what you approved. So how is, I guess what I'm getting at is the question on there. So if this had to go back to you to go on these little particular parts on there, how long would that take?
Because the city has already approved the project at this location 2 years earlier, we would be able to utilize quite a bit of that analysis and streamline the review and process and bring it to the commission probably within 2 to 3 months. Whereas typically a brand new project would take much longer. Again, there were studies already done on this project, so we could piggyback on previous analysis.
So if we uphold the appeal, we deny your denial, okay, what happens next?
Then what's being proposed by the applicant could be submitted to plan check. So it does not have to go back to the Planning Commission for a public hearing.
Okay, so it can start the process. Okay, I think that's, those are my only questions from the staff right now. Thank you.
Vice Chair Uva?
Okay, so just to clarify then, to continue on what Commissioner Darrow was saying.
Do you have it on?
If we deny it and they have to start over, that you've identified the time frame, what is the additional cost to them?
I believe the application fee is about $3,300.
Okay. Okay. So I see this as a question of semantics here, the wording. You know, what's a substantial change versus what's not a substantial change? I think that for the future, we need to clarify this and have some sort of something in place so when this, God forbid, ever happens again, we have some clear guidelines. But that's not going to help us right now. But in the future, I think we need to look into that. I agree with Commissioner Guerra that it's now a standalone building. It's a 1-story building. Before it was a 2-story. Before it had 4 tenants. Now it's just going to have 1 tenant. So it's just a matter of semantics. What's substantial, what's not. It's still a restaurant. It still has a drive-through. That's where my mind is thinking and trying to process. Not really a question, but I guess just a comment.
Commissioner Duarte?
You know, just my comments for staff. I think it's kind of been spoken about with the staff, the Exhibit A, the applicant. The big word here is substantial, right? I think when I went over the packet and I saw, I mean, I underlined the term, and sure enough, that's what we're talking about here today. Is I think, you know, a big issue for me is it a change? Yes, it's definitely a change. But the fact that there is no definitive term for substantial, just, you know, it does concern me. In the sense, is it, you know, we've talked about that. I don't want to, you know, it is a restaurant. It actually would probably now be a little more in conformance with the actual other, the other street corners, but there is no front parking now. You know, that's kind of where I'm at is does it meet a substantial change or not? Still restaurant, drive-through the same, probably a little more conforming to the other corners. But I think that's my only comment is if, just like Ms. Uva just stated, is, for the future, if we could have maybe that term defined. Because definitely it is a change, but is it a substantial change or not? I don't think there's any guidelines for the staff or for the applicant. And I wouldn't want that in the future to be a subjective term. So those are just my comments in terms of what the staff has, what the staff is recommending as opposed to, what the applicant is stating. So I just like that for future references, if we can maybe just define what substantial is or not.
My only question will be, how will we move forward so applications don't come forward with us with substantial? How would we move forward from here?
For the future situation? Good question. I think you've answered in part that it's better to have code that kind of defines what substantial is. In some cities, they do have qualifiers. For example, an increase of 20% in height or floor area and so on. And so then you could compare that and determine if it is substantial or not. Much easier. It would be more very objective standards. So at this point, we don't have, as I mentioned earlier, so from staff's perspective, it was, whereas previous project was a remodel of existing, and the existing was being maintained. This is demolishing the existing building and building a new one. So from staff's perspective, it seemed different. And also, since it was approved by the Planning Commission, I can't second guess if that would have been okay by the commission if 6 months later there's construction going on, rightfully so, somebody could say, that's not what we approved, what happened? So that's one of the reasons why I had to bring this to the commission, because at the end of the day, it's your community, it's what you approve, so you have that opportunity to kind of override, in some cases, staff's interpretation. But having standards would be better in the future.
And so we just recommend that we bring forward some language or changes so it doesn't happen again now, or how does a...
I have an argument against that.
I don't know.
I have an argument against that a little bit because, right now this allowed us to have an objective view of this. If the definition of that was not in there, the substantial change, then we probably couldn't approve this if we wanted to. I understand your point. You're right. We drive through there and we're like, what the heck? That's not what we voted for. So this, I don't have a problem with you bringing it back on there, but this is going to give me the opportunity to vote to deny his appeal or deny his denial, to uphold that, because it's an objective term. So if there was really things in there, I think, my opinion is this is a much better project. Okay, and I'm going to vote that way. Okay, but I now have a reason to. That's what I'm going to hold my hat on. Is that there's no definition of that, in my opinion. So if we defined it too narrowly, we may not get this opportunity in the future. So that's my only objection to that. But
and I open up to my commissioners if you would like for the applicant to come forward, and I can reopen public comment, reopen it, but it will allow everybody to come back and talk about the non-public comments. Madam Attorney, would you want to add on to anything?
Yeah, just to clarify. So obviously with the Brown Act, you are required to provide an opportunity for public comment either prior to or during consideration of an item. And so in this case, we did comply with the Brown Act because we provided public comment prior during the section, not consent, non-agenda, and business items. But that doesn't mean that you can't give more opportunities to speak. You just can't give less, right? So if it's the pleasure of the commission and they would like to hear from the appellant, then you can have public comment at this time, additional additional public comment so that everyone would have an opportunity to speak again. But that's completely at the pleasure of the commission. It's not again, it's not required. We've already provided that opportunity on the agenda.
Okay. Does the planning staff have any recommendation on the item?
As I mentioned earlier, our recommendation is deny the appeal and uphold the city planner's interpretation.
Thank you. It is now time for the Planning Commission to deliberate. Does the commission have any questions at this time, or would the commission like to discuss the item? Vice Chair Uva.
No questions.
Commissioner Guerra.
I am going to vote, and I'd like to make a motion on there that we uphold the denial and we let this project go forward here. From a cost saving, from a project saving, from a subjective, the substantial change definition that we can uphold, and I want this project to go forward. So I'm going to be voting that way, and I'll make a motion if that's okay.
Commissioner Duarte.
Will it be overruling the?
It's denying the denial, right? Isn't that it?
I was going to suggest some language. There's many different ways of saying this, but one way of saying it is that you are granting the appeal.
Granting the appeal.
That would be our suggestion.
Granting the appeal. I want to grant the appeal. I make a motion.
Yeah, and I would just say this is it. So I was, and I don't know if the other commissioners are here. I approved the original project, and when I looked at what they're proposing and what I agreed to, I pretty much thought it was in line with what I actually agreed to. So that's why I'm comfortable, denying the denial or. Because it's something like how we talked about it. You don't want to see you approve a project and then you're like, this is not what I approved.
Correct. Yeah.
So my thing was like it actually looks kind of like what I approved.
And I wanted to echo that. I actually rewatched our meeting for that approval, and I think it's going to be exactly the same. I think it's going to be a great project. So we already got a first. Do we have?
I'll do a second.
A second. So, do we do?
A yes means we're granting the appeal,
Yeah, that's what I
right?
want to make sure.
Okay.
Right. So
no, I did it with you.
To grant the appeal means that you are disagreeing with planning staff, and what that means is that you do not believe it is a substantial change in the project, and the project would be able to move forward to plan check as soon as the applicant is ready to do so. That's the complete version of what a yes vote means right now.
Okay.
Good.
The motion passes. The action of the Planning Commission will be final unless the matter is appealed to the City Council with appropriate fee within the next 15-day period set forth by the city's municipal code. Does the interim city planner have any other business to discuss?
No.
Does the interim city planner have any additional? Oh, you have some.
Staff,
Yes.
thank you for that. Sorry, having some technical difficulties. I just wanted to know a couple of things that are coming up that are available to you. One thing is, and I think I've mentioned it before, we wanted to do some additional training with the commission. There is training on March 30th between 5 and 7. That's going to be the AB 1234 training, and that will actually be done here, and it'll be done by your interim city attorney, Lauren Langer, and myself. So if you'd like to participate, send an email to myself or to staff, and we'll add you to that list. That's March 30th, which is a Thursday, from 5 to 7.
I will be there. I have
Thank
to get mine in.
Thank you. And if you've done it already, and you still would like to do it again, it will be a much smaller group, so you'd be able to ask questions much more easily. So that's one thing available to you. Another is the firm BB&K is also having a webinar, and it's a free webinar that is going to go review some of the 2023 changes to housing laws. So we'll be talking about ADUs and density bonus, Housing Accountability Act, Housing Crisis Act, some of the bigger laws and some of the big changes that were made this year. It's a free webinar. That's taking place on, and I want to make sure I'm accurate because I put it on my calendar. It is the day before the ethics training, March 29th from 10 to 11:30. You do have to register for that, so if you'd like, just send us an email and then we'll forward you the email so that you can sign up for that. I do intend to do a little bit of training regarding housing laws, but this would be kind of a nice intro to just tell you what's new with these particular laws. So I wanted to do that. I also wanted to note that you probably already know, we do have a new city manager, and he did want to make it today, but he had a prior engagement and he could not come by just to kind of say hello and introduce himself, but he will do that at the next Planning Commission meeting. So that will happen. And I think the last thing, we all know that our Commissioner Uva was honored at the City Council meeting yesterday. So I just wanted to congratulate her again for that honor. And, we're very happy to have you here on the commission, and just wanted to note that. That's it. That's the most I will talk ever.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does the interim city planner have any additional comments?
No.
No. Then we adjourn city meeting at 8:56.